Regardless. Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for giving up what turned out to be a beautiful afternoon for this meeting. I feel a little bad about dragging you inside, except that this is really important and valuable for us. I'm Nick Johnson. I'm the director of the Tax Revision Commission. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm just really grateful for your participation, for the chance to be meeting with you and other stakeholders as we're doing over this period of time as part of our role. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of where we are in the process, just to kind of situate us, and then introduce the members of the commission and the staff, and then I'll give you guys a chance to say a few words, and then we'll just get into a bit of a conversation. I think we're waiting for one more person. One of our this was Gordon from Monumental Sports was supposed to be here. He's not here, but I think we're waiting for a slide in. My apologies to the commissioners here who have already heard what I'm about to say, what I've been saying to the other groups. So
as long as you're consistent, it's okay.
So it changes a little bit every time. So yeah, again, thanks for being here. So just so you're aware of who we are. And then I'll ask Mayor Williams to say a couple of words, Chair of the Commission, Erica Williams, Gregory McCarthy, Yashin Sayan, Carolyn Rudd, and our CFO Glenn Lee is online. They are all members of the commission, so we've got a good turnout. We've been doing a lot of sessions, so I know more commissioners wanted to be at more of these sessions, but we told them we'll make the materials available. We'll summarize what folks have said. But everyone's very appreciative of your time. So just to give you a little bit of background about what we're doing, and apologies if you've been following the work of the commission and you already know it, but just to make sure we're all grounded on that. Start at the beginning. Every 10 years, the council and the mayor appoint an 11-member commission to do a careful review of the whole tax system. And the last one back in 2013 did advance some pretty big changes. And many of them were actually adopted by the council and the mayor. So we have big shoes to fill here. At the same time, a lot has changed over the last 10 years. The economy has changed, tax base has changed, and a lot of the community priorities have changed. So we have now a really important opportunity through this commission process to rethink the tax system, sort of top to bottom, and to propose to the mayor and the council a set of recommendations. The principles that the commission has adopted for those recommendations are as follows. First, the recommendations are going to follow the data and be based on sound tax policy research. Second, they're going to be shaped by the experiences and needs of people across the district from a diversity of perspectives. And third, we're going to make sure they are devised collaboratively to ensure bold and thoughtful changes, recommending we have a number of different perspectives on the commission. So in our recommendations that we ultimately submit, we have agreed as a body that we're going to try to achieve the following. First, a broader and more resilient tax base for the post-COVID economy. And this is in order to protect against economic shifts and shocks and ensure future funding for high-quality public services and share tax burdens fairly across the community. So the first big principle. The second is around progressivity and racial equity, to eliminate racial disparities, protect low-income residents, and lift up our middle class. The third is around economic efficiency and competitiveness to advance growth and prosperity for all residents. And the fourth is simple, open, and fair administrative processes in order to reduce compliance burdens for residents and businesses. Now, you represent important constituencies here in the district, and we really are excited to hear from you. And through this conversation and through other options for engagement, we're excited to learn more about what shifts you think could help us meet those principles to build the healthy and thriving district for the decade ahead that we all want. So just to give you a sense of where we are, we're right now in the middle of a 3-week process. We're convening about 10 meetings like this one with small groups of key stakeholders who can bring key points of perspectives into our deliberations. We're also holding 2 public meetings next week at which members of the general public can present their perspectives. So we've got one May 1st in person at the ARC in Ward 8. And May 4th, we have a virtual, May 4th, we have a virtual citywide town hall. And our job throughout, I should say, we also last week had a session with ANC commissioners. And throughout this whole process, our job is really to listen and learn. As a commission, we have not ruled anything in or out. We're still in the sort of collecting ideas stage of the process. Now, we have heard a lot about some of the challenges that face our tax system, and I know we'll hear more probably today. The changes in the economy that are affecting revenues. The revenue forecast has been downgraded as a result of some of the changes that are going on. We've heard about taxes that hit hardest to those with least ability to pay. We've heard about tax breaks that benefit only a few. We've heard about the challenges we face as a federal district in how federal law shields, particularly commuters, from taxation. We've heard about economic competition from our regional neighbors and national competitors. We've heard about aspects of the tax code that reinforce racial inequity. And we've heard about complexities and challenges just in dealing with the tax system itself from an administrative perspective. Now, not all of these challenges, and many of them don't, lead directly or simply to solutions, right? They're technical sometimes. They involve complicated trade-offs, and commissioners have been presented with a whole range of policy options. We're doing our best to be really transparent about what options are on the table. We've already put up a list of very preliminary, just sort of the options that we've heard is on our website, and we're going to be continuing to put those forward as we dig into our deliberation. We really want folks to be able to see what we're doing and thinking about and weigh in and build. So where we are now is over the course of the summer and into the fall, we're going to begin to refine and narrow down the list of possible policy options. The deadline is December. By December, our intent is to agree to a final package of recommendations that will then be presented to the council and the mayor. So as we refine and develop the proposals for consideration, we will be continuing to post them on the website, discuss them publicly, and there will be additional chances for you all to weigh in a variety of formats. We have mechanisms on the website for you to upload comments, and if you've already uploaded your testimony today, that will be a continuing process. We expect to have additional forums and so on for folks to weigh in. The last thing I'll say about sort of where we are is that we also know that we have a pretty hard job. The last Tax Revision Commission compiled its recommendations in a time of budget surpluses, and they're actually the provisions that they passed that were enacted ended up actually costing the district revenues. In other words, they were passing more tax cuts than they were tax increases. That's a little bit easier, perhaps, than the current situation when we have pretty constrained revenues. And to be clear, we have not been given specific direction from the council and mayor as to whether we're supposed to be looking at overall revenue raisers, overall revenue losers, or staying revenue neutral. But I think we all have some awareness of the budget circumstances we're under, as I said, with revenue forecasts that recently have been downgraded. So, as noted, this time is about listening and learning from you. We are happy to answer questions from you about our work and how we can do it better. But our main purpose is really to collect your ideas about the system. So we're going to try to refrain from flat out expressing our opinions about what the commission should be done. As a chance, we haven't had a chance as a commission to do that. You might hear some strongly worded probing questions, and I encourage you not to read too much into that. But hopefully we'll get into it a little bit. So the format is I will give you all a chance to introduce yourselves and just say your name, organizational affiliation, your preferred pronouns, if you want to share those, and just real briefly, 2 to 3 minutes, preferably no more, about the perspective you represent at the table and your priorities and ideas for the work of the commission. Again, thanks for those of you who submitted written testimony, and we have that for the record, so you don't need to go into that in depth, but maybe a couple of highlights for those who may not have read it. So we'll go all around, and then we'll questions, everything, reasonably small groups, so we should be able to have a good conversation. Everyone, you want to say a word or two?
Well, I just said one thing, and that is, one of the things we learned in the last commission was that, it really is important to take a proactive, approach to participation, engagement with different constituency stakeholders and the citizenship ring at large. So that's what we're doing here, is engagement with different sectors of our economy, different stakeholders, different interests, approaches, the city at large. One, because, we believe it's just part of good governance. And two, I think all of us want to use, this, moment with the Tax Revision Commission coming as it does like a tide or, some astronomical thing every 10 years, like the Chicago's. We want to come out and use this as a teaching moment, for the public. And I know that Evan Zierman is here, was on the last commission. One of the things that I think everybody, was disappointed with is we had very little citizen participation in the last commission. So that's why we're really doing this direct engagement the way we're doing it. Really are very, very pleased that you're here. And with that, I'll continue around the table with my colleague.
Erica, Gregory, Yeshua, Caroline, you guys wanna chime in at all, add anything to this? Oh, we have more folks who have joined. Yep, so I mentioned, two other commissioners have joined us online, Jody McLean and Rashad Young, Ledley, as well as CFO who's on, ex officio. And I should introduce, Mike Hagerman and Becky Strauss, who are with, the commission staff.
Thank you.
With that, I'm just gonna go around this way and start with you. Just, very brief introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Angie Gates. I am the president and CEO of Events DC, and I'm delighted to be here and be part of this conversation. I'll provide a brief statement to Mayor Williams, members of the commission, and staff. I want to once again thank you for inviting me to join your hospitality and entertainment stakeholders meeting and for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I am Angie Gates, and I am once again the new president and CEO of Events DC. I'm ready to rock and roll and help with this tax experience and process. As Washington's official convention and sports authority, Events DC creates experiences that engage, excite, and entertain visitors from around the world and generate economic and community benefits for DC residents and businesses. The majority of our funding comes from a portion of tourism-related taxes collected by the district, such as the hotel tax, the restaurant tax, and taxes on rental cars. The tourism and hospitality industries are our primary focus, and we work to keep our restaurants and hotels full while boasting our nightlife and cultural organizations. Our venue, the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, is in the hub of downtown DC. This fiscal year, we are on pace to host approximately 150 events at the convention center, putting us back near pre-pandemic business levels. We know that downtown's comeback is closely linked to the success of our hospitality and tourism industries. Live events, conventions, meetings, sports, and cultural activations serve as an economic engine for our diverse and vibrant city. Our entertainment and sports arena and Gateway in Ward 8 and the Fields and Festival Grounds at RFK in Ward 7 host hundreds of exciting events and activations that engage both visitors and DC residents. As the commission prepares its recommendations, I would urge you to carefully consider the substantial economic impact these industries have on our local economy and the success of the dedicated tax funding model. Just this fiscal year, the $140 million we received from those taxes will in turn generate over $350 million in economic impact. My top priority for Events DC is to continue to grow our core convention and meeting business, known as Citywides. The economic impact and jobs that are generated from Citywides will contribute to our long-term growth. In conclusion, I would like to thank the members of the commission and your staff. I know the task before you is not an easy one, especially after that introduction you just shared. I thought I was having a hard day. Clearly not. Clearly not. But we are all appreciative of your hard work, and I'm here to seek any support, guidance, and make sure that we, on our end, perform the economic health needed for our great city, Washington, DC.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good morning. I'm Solomon King, President and CEO of the Hotel Association of Washington, DC, a trade association in the District of Columbia, representing operating hotels in the district. My testimony is on the lengthy side. You already have it, so I will not read it to you. What I will do is provide a few quick highlights. Those will involve the creation of the Tourism Recovery District, some of the legislation coming out of the district council and the impact that that has on the under tax base from a hotel standpoint, and also some very real specific issues as it relates to property valuations on the hotel side. Quickly, and I know that Robin will discuss this in her comments as well. In 2019, the district had a record 24.6 billion visitors. That spent a total of $8.2 billion and generated $896 million in tax revenue. After the pandemic caused a loss of 11.3 million visitors, $4.5 billion in visitor spending, and equally as important, over 37,000 jobs, we knew that there was something that needed to be done for us to get out and be more competitive with other destinations as from a funding standpoint, so that Destination DC would have the ammunition necessary to effectively market the District of Columbia. The best approach and the most expeditious one that was available to us at the time was to create what is called a tourism recovery district, which means that there will be a 1% levy placed on each hotel room stay, in addition to the occupancy tax and the funds generated from that levy, which we anticipate being just north of $20 million, will go directly to Destination DC to fund very specific marketing initiatives. This is different than the occupancy tax in that it does not have to go through the general fund, nor does it go through the formula that Angie mentioned earlier and then go to Destination DC. It goes directly to Destination DC. So we were very pleased that with the mayor's support for that, and we were also very pleased with the council's unanimous support. This TRD will be in place for 4 years. They have been successful in different parts of the country. And again, we just realized that it was something that needed to be done in order for us to go out and be more competitive with those that we compete against for group and leisure business. The second issue is being mindful of the type of legislation that's being passed at the district council. The one that's real time and an active issue is a piece of legislation, and it's a mouthful, the Hotel Enhanced Cleaning and Notice of Service Disruption Clarification Temporary Amendment Act. That's the name of the bill, so that sounds fun by its name. The hotel cleaning portion requires that rooms be cleaned on a daily basis. That was happening during the pandemic by and large anyway. So once we got some refinement in the rulemaking process on that, that issue was largely resolved. The issue that continues to be a bit sticky and goes into affecting the tax base is where if you have any First Amendment activity, or if you have any construction near or around the hotel, then an incoming guest will then need to be notified of that, and they have an opportunity to cancel their reservation at no financial penalty. The issue lies wherein this is the District of Columbia. I mean, we are the seat of free speech in the world, let alone the nation. So that doesn't work for us. And also, fortunately, there is quite a bit of construction and growth and development going around in the district. So if this were to go through as it was initially proposed, and again, we've made some small changes and minor modifications, but it still exists, we would find ourselves in a persistent mode of communicating incoming guests, essentially telling them to stay elsewhere. That's not my understanding of the mayor's comeback plan. That's not my understanding of where the district wants to be as we continue to go. Candidly, this was something that was advocated for by organized labor for a number of reasons, and we stand on separate sides of that issue. But that's basically the summary. I'll be happy to share any more details in the Q&A. The third and final issue is one in where we are working with the CFO and his team, and where many of our owners and operators believe that evaluations for hotels this cycle on the tax assessment side are still too high, that they aren't reflective of the actual impact that hotels faced during the pandemic, and that I believe they're only 10% across the board lower than where they were in 2019. But unfortunately, most of our hotels aren't there yet. We've reached out to the CFO's office to see if they would be willing to consider an across-the-board approach that would potentially alleviate the issue for the overwhelming majority of our hotel operators, but they promptly responded and shared that at this point, they continue to use the current existing appeal structure and handle it on a case-by-case basis. Our concern is that we're pretty confident that there are going to be a lot of appeals because folks just don't think that their evaluations are being done accurately. And we're also concerned about any potential unintended consequences from having a backlog of the appeals process. That's a quick summary, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Robin McLean. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Destination DC. As you know, we're the official destination marketing organization for the district. So hello to Mayor Williams, the commission members and staff. What I'm going to be reading from is a complement to what we submitted as the written document, but not a verbatim read. So DDC is an important economic generator for the city as we work to attract leisure and meetings visitors to the nation's capital. As we are vying for our fair share of visitors, it's important that DDC's budget be competitive. And there are three main reasons why that DDC needs additional budget, and that is economic impact, shaping DC's story, and the return on investment. The economic impact, Solomon has already talked about 2019 and the 10 years of record growth in terms of, taxes collected locally, jobs, visitor spending, and total visitors. But tourism is still recovering from the pandemic, with the latest numbers from 2021 showing all visitation data down compared to 2019. We anticipate that the 2022 data released on May 11th will show increases year over year, but will still not be back yet to those pre-pandemic levels. Shaping DC's story is really important to challenge what consumers learn elsewhere. We call it the CNN effect. You can call it the BBC effect, or any editorial in the world that basically describes DC as a political kind of town, or that only politics exist here. So through our marketing efforts, we are promoting DC beyond the National Mall. We're showcasing all 8 wards of the city and highlight the unique neighborhoods throughout the district. We promote DC as a place for history, yes, but also dining, theater, nightlife, arts and culture, the outdoors, shopping, and sports. Data inform the development of our target audiences for our advertising, and it delivers personalized content ranging from free family activities to like the newest rooftop hotspot at a hotel. And our sales efforts are domestic and international and shape the narrative of DC as a world-class destination. Finally, we do improve our return on investment through our work. So whether it's the economic impact generated by the sales team booking citywide conventions, so that's $277 million estimated this year. The tourism team booking hundreds of thousands of room nights through international tour operators, sports and special events, or the marketing team generating a 3-to-1 return on investment from its advertising. DDC delivers ROI. And we're really appreciative of the city's recognition of the need to invest in marketing through the Tourism Recovery District assessment. It began April 1st. We'll start to see those dollars, we believe, in June, and are really looking forward to expanding our economic impact. And so thank you for all the support. And just to finish up, DDC is focused on marketing Washington, D.C. to increase visitation, spending, and tax revenue for the district, especially when it comes to that more lucrative international visitor who stays longer and spends more. And the competition for us is fierce, and a strong and competitive budget will position DC and its residents to benefit from more visitors.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, apologies for my targeting. My name is Jerry Sullivan, Director of Government Affairs, member acting, Resident Association of Washington. Happy to be here to bring greetings from Sean Town.
I didn't get to hear the who, the what.
I'm sorry. Jay Riddell Tabasola. I'm Director of Government Affairs and Member Advocacy for Western Association of.
Oh, great, okay, okay, thank you.
Our CEO and President Sean Townsend sends regrets. He had a conflict. We'll be invested for him. RMW has more than 1,400 members in the metropolitan Washington region. Majority of those are small, independently owned mom and pop shops. And importantly, I think we can offer that experience from perspective. These are folks who every day are working to be in compliance with the law. I want to submit our written comments on this discussion, but I'll sort of say a couple of things at the outset. First, remember when I'm going to copy something you said, that we really would support an expenditures commission to complement the work of this commission. It's difficult to discuss revenue without looking at how funds are currently being spent and possible inefficiency savings that we have. The second thing I'll say at the outset is I'm going to copy you, Yasha, that you said, which is entrepreneurship is how you expand the pie. And here we're talking about budget deficits and forecasts. And we would argue that when you do things like pass lower taxes and reduce fees, there's strong arguments to be made for net increases in city revenues, not only in terms of attracting new business and retaining new business, but bringing a large number of businesses, gray market, into compliance. And I can speak about that more when we talk about especially issues around racial equity. And ways that we can do that and advance that with a simpler, more straightforward tax code. The second piece I'll talk about broadly on that same note is the need for clean hands reform. There was an effort that the council undertook last year. It got all held up in paid drivers. But the reality is that clean hands is a very real tool to shut out, especially entrepreneurs of color, from opening their own businesses. And then this will really be my last thing I say, my comments, and we also need to talk about patent administration. I would say, and I think CFO is on the screen, customer service is great. Our members contact OTR about a problem, they get a response. It's really inefficient, and our preference, and I'm sure your preference to CFO would be that the process worked and we wouldn't need to contact you because our members can't get clean hands because of a holdup with a payment they made to the EOS the day before, for example. So we would hope that these recommendations would, would really recognize that one, more efficient administration would serve everybody, would save money, and that when we talk about lowering taxes, we are talking about it anyway. Thanks.
The agencies, so yeah, get the agencies synced and aligned better.
It's been a long time ago. Yeah, it's a challenge.
That's thinking, yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Jay.
Yeah.
So that concludes our opening talks. Let me throw it open to the commissioners to throw out some questions. Who would like to go?
So let me start with the Hotel Association. Why, explain me why the hotel workers would want the easier, more permissive cancellation policy. I'm not sure why that, what would the interest there be? Why would they, that seemed that would lower your receipts and volume, which would hurt business.
Your assumption is exactly correct. It has been
What am
our
I missing?
You're not missing anything, ironically enough. In our experience, where this is in place in different parts of the country, so it's not our experience, it's a reference experience. It has been used as leverage during difficult negotiation points to compel one side of the table back to the table doing collective bargaining negotiations. For example, historically, if you're talking about hotel workers and not management, correct? Yes, I'm talking about the union, let's be clear.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. So it's been used to create a leverage point to focus management back to the table when they otherwise would have been able to withstand whatever demonstrations or work shortages were being executed by organized labor. When you start to have an economic impact, then their hope is that you would be compelled to get back to the table sooner than you would otherwise. That has been the experience of different destinations in the country and have this in place.
And what is, one of the things that, and anyone can answer this question, I didn't get where we are with business travel. I heard where we are with tourism, I heard where we are with in tourism as related to casual tourism. But I didn't really hear where we are in aggregate numbers, but where are we with, business travel? Because we've been talking about that since the advent of COVID. How is that doing?
I will say from the hotel perspective, we're still down, and we're still down a good bit. We're down more than 10%, which we're seeing on the other side. To Andy's point, the group business is really beginning to come back in a positive way. Business travel, a lot of that for us in the district is going to be based on the federal calendar. And so with the nature of the federal calendar and the nature of where the federal workforce is as it relates to them being in the office, we're still, that's been the slowest segment to return.
Yes, the individual business traveler hasn't returned, and we're not the only city in the US experiencing that. That is a national trend. Second to that would be the international traveler.
Whereas on the group and convention and meeting side, we've started to, see those numbers increase substantially. Even during the pandemic period, we offered like a virtual component. And even at this point in time, we still have to provide some type of hybrid service when necessary. One of the things we definitely try to advocate as well with these big conferences and conventions and meetings citywide that come in town is all the additional opportunities with the free museums, entertainment, and live events that can keep you here, a couple of days after the conference or come a couple of days before. But on the group side, it's increased.
And one of the things that, back in the day, the Borough City Council, I know when I first got here, and Gregory McCarthy was, we were working on expanding the district's, tourism, working with Destination DC. And one of the things was expanding the POW and having the POW, the big tourism convention. IBW, I'm sorry.
We did in 2017.
Yeah, to have that in DC. But I remember everybody was talking about BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China. I mean, that must be under stress. Is that still a component? Internet, talk about the approach to fostering and expanding international travel.
So that is really one of the things that the TRD is going to allow us to do tremendously, is to expand where we are in the world in terms of representation. Currently, we're in India, the UK, Germany, Australia, China, which certainly has not returned in terms of leisure travel. And so that will allow us to expand in some other markets that are showing real promise. And so that is Japan, maybe Korea, some other European markets, maybe Mexico, Canada. We don't deal with it as a domestic location, but it kind of complements the US visitor, if you will. And then Brazil is one that's kind of back on the table that we're looking at. And so we'll look at the lift from those markets and decide kind of how to open representation in those markets as we go. But it's down. And so IPW, as you recall, you were very engaged with us in hosting
I
that.
can't remember the name.
Yeah, but in 2017, and remember,
I saw
promise was all of the great growth that would happen.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to see that, and with that 10-year visitation trend, it just, went kaput with the pandemic.
Very, very, one thing I would love to get from you, you don't have to really go into it here, is some data on the role that you play. We've talked about this before too, that the hotel, tourism, hospitality is really a gateway of opportunity for work where you can begin right out of family support welfare into not just hotel jobs, but and there's stories of this management executive jobs. I would love to see, data on that, because that's not just the revenue impact of tourism hospitality, but the real multiplier effect with, what we were discussing yesterday, attacking poverty, concentrated poverty. I'll defer to other
May I
commissioners.
just address that for one moment? I just want to let you know, there's one anecdote I can share that's a very strong example of what Destination in DC is doing. So I have 3 colleagues currently who are scholarship winners from the American Experience Foundation, our 501c3, and working with those hospitality and tourism high schools in the district. We are really trying to focus on educating students and that pipeline for our industry. And these three young women that I'm working with currently are great examples of that. So that isn't telling you the full data and the full scope, but it's a great anecdote for what we are working to do to complement that effort.
And I just want to add, similar to a program that we're looking to implement at Events DC, it was formerly the Creative Academy Career Access Program in industries that tie into tourism, hospitality, but also some of the other creative industries. It's more of a vocational aspect where you can get paid on the job training, but it helps with that management trajectory in the hospitality and tourism side. A lot of, everyone's not cut out from your traditional 4-year college educational institutions, but I know when I was formerly at the Warner Theater and working with the stagehands and the unions and just learning that way of training, that's what we do all the time. We're loading in and out shows. So we're talking about this career access program as well.
And those things to us are very, very important, and we're obviously engaged in that space too, working with the WIC, doing all of that. And it's critically important now because we're currently experiencing a phenomenon unlike any other, and where we have an acute shortage of workers on the hotel side. I won't speak for Chain Restaurant, but I am familiar with their situation. There are a number of reasons, almost all of them are pandemic related, but we're having a serious worker problem, workforce problem rather, not only on the acquisition side, but on the retention side as well.
You mentioned, I thought I heard you say in your comments that the evaluation of the tax assessment is not being performed accurately.
Well, that's to be determined through the appeals process. We're beginning to get feedback, and I know the CFO is on the line, and we've reached out to his team that the assessment I think the assessment date for tax year 2022 was on January 2021, and it doesn't reflect the impact that hotels were still going through at that time on January 2021. In fact, we believe it was only lower by roughly 10 to 14% when they were significantly lower than that in January of 2021. So we were hopeful that maybe there could be something put into place that would suit hotels across the board, but it was relayed to us quickly. I might add that it would be better if we went through the conventional appeals process and took care of it on a case-by-case basis, which is fine. We shared with them that they should anticipate getting a significant number of appeals requests, but we were concerned about unintended consequences, like Shay articulated earlier. Clean hands is critical, and we don't know kind of what the status of that would be in the event, where you are in the appeal, what that would look like. So just some of the technical questions and concerns that we had if there were to be a backlog in the appeals on the assessment.
That's great.
Thank you. I've been looking forward to this discussion. So truth up front, I was a board member at Destination DP for a number of years, and a great appreciation for the work. And I really enjoyed what you guys said. But honestly, I didn't think anything there was terribly bold. So it's known that the mayor is in her comeback plan basically said the work that you guys are doing is the economic future of our city. The office industry may or may not, get back to where it was, but you guys are the future. The city's relying on you, no pressure, to bring us back. So how is the tax structure helping you or harming you in that? Are the restaurant taxes, hotel taxes, are they right? Could they be lower? Are those taxes elastic in terms of business? Do they make us uncompetitive to get conventions? And when I served on the board of Destination DC, I always thought it was ironic that funding for the agency goes up when the hotels are full, when you could argue that it's needed least of all because the hotels are full. So when you have a crisis like we're in now, when the hotels are not as full as you'd like, you have to pass a special law to market to get the hotels full. So that's kind of counterintuitive. And I just wonder if there are other models around the country that do it differently. So I would throw out something basic. If you were designing this from scratch, of funding the mechanism to market the city, or funding the types of taxes that we have to sustain your industries, which are going to be our growth, what would you design from scratch? And does it look anything like this? And I'll just throw out two. The ROI study that you mentioned, I think which got started when I was serving on the board, came up with a number. And it's, I think, people are getting higher, so for every dollar we spend in marketing.
It's $3 and
Okay,
8 cents.
so one of the things, I don't know whether the CFO is listening, but one of the things that would be great is if that revenue could be recognized upfront in the city's financial plan. In other words, if that number is really accurate, right? If we think we're spending $30 million on marketing, if we're confident there's gonna be $90 million in return, if that could be reflected in the financial plan, it'd be easier for the city to allocate extra money to you guys. So what can we do at the tax commission to make your job easier?
I'll take a first stab at it. Bold is great. Bold is what I do. It would, what we have in place now, the TRD is bold. It's going to be incredible and it's really going to help. We are reliant upon the work product of Destination DC to get people here. We have no doubt that we can provide them with a world-class experience. I have no doubt that they will have a world-class meeting and convention experience in our convention center, but we have to get them here. To your point, the reason that we had to execute the TRD is because we do not have a source of dedicated funding from the district. That makes us an outlier as it relates to other cities that we compete directly against for business. The reason that we had to essentially fund this assessment ourselves, which is ironic, the better we do, the more we get. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense on its face, but the reason that exists is because we don't have a source of dedicated funds from the district. And I assure you that is an outlier. The narrative was many years ago that this is Washington DC, what's their market? Everybody knows what we are. What was it? Come and see everything is free, kind of sort of talking about the museums, that sort of deal. But DDC has done a great job of changing that narrative. And they've also done a really good job of demonstrating that $3.08 of return. And it seems to me like it should be considered that our marketing bureau should have a dedicated source of funding from the district, like every other destination that they can be.
When I looked at your comparative analysis on the hotel taxes, I was surprised that there were 8 cities with higher hotel tax rates in DC, and yet we only increased by 1%.
Well, that was for the TRD. So we didn't increase the occupancy tax because if we increased the occupancy tax, then those dollars would have been encumbered going through the general fund, going through the convention center, and then going to Destination DC. So we wanted to try to maximize as many of the dollars as possible to aggregate that and go directly to DC. Because when we ran the numbers, if we did that, we would have ended up with like and it just wasn't worth the energy and the effort and to put, and I'm really glad you pointed that out because I know that DC and their team, as do we pay very close attention to where we are on that. That's not a list you want to be at the top of because I don't know, as an independent leisure traveler, if you really pay attention to how much taxes you're paying, but when people want to go book in the building and you're booking huge groups of business, the tax counts. When you're trying to get people to come to your conference and that bottom line dollar count, you don't want to be at the very top of that.
Do you have a sense for how sensitive citywides are to that tax? In other words, is a 1% decrease or increase going to help or harm your ability to attract citywides? That, you know?
I think with the tourism recovery tax that's in place, because the marketing and the branding is going much wider, it's gonna create more of an interest for them to come and book here in Washington DC. I don't think it's gonna hurt us in any way. And to ask about your going bold statement, for me, we do have the dedicated tax that's, in place. But it's been more of a leveraging our resources collectively together, more so than changing the tax structure, at least as relates to Events DC. And not only leveraging our resources as a hospitality alliance with Restaurant Association, Destination DC, and Hotel Association, but also leveraging those resources when we're looking at being a former film commissioner, looking at the film rebate fund and how we leverage that coupled with, the additional resources we have to, bring people here to Washington
I
DC.
recall when I was on the board that there were other cities, in terms of our board, it was a fund they had to
Opportunity
incentivize.
fund.
What's that, sorry?
An opportunity fund, which we have.
So you have through the mechanism, Angie, the resources that you need to incentivize. Like, I mean, sometimes it'd be be nice to think we're competing with London and New York and Paris, but sometimes we lose business to, no offense, but Indianapolis or Fort Worth,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
So
Yep,
is
but
is there something else that would help you seal the deal?
That's a great question, and to your point, that's why we had to have a think outside of the box approach. And so when sitting at the table, when we're doing bids to try to get, these sporting events and things of that nature, I look across the board because other organizations or agencies, it ultimately impacts those decisions of what we can offer. So the dedicated tax that's in place, I will stand firm and say, let's maintain and keep that because, that's what's truly needed. But from just an operational standpoint, we've had to utilize some of these other incentives because that's what organizations look at. In New Orleans, we call it lagniappe. Like, what is that something extra you're getting, for free or what they think is for free? It's called lagniappe. So I've just had to make sure that I'm locking step with some of our partners and some of the other agencies throughout the city to offer that incentive or extra component.
Last question, and I'll shut up. Is the convention center an adequate size? I remember when it opened, I think it was the 6th largest in the country, and now it's, tell me.
The 19th.
Right.
So is it gonna need to be expanded at some point?
So we're doing an assessment now regarding the growth. Of course, no one ever wants to say no. If somebody calls you and they're ready to come, you want to instantly say yes. Is it a little tight? Yes. It's tight. But once again, it's taking a think outside of the box approach and leveraging some of the other facilities that's within walking distance, because that's the main thing with a lot of the conventions and meetings. They want to be able to walk to their locations. We just had a meeting yesterday where this one particular convention is continuing to grow, and they're practically using every meeting space in all of our, ballroom spaces. So we are looking at some of the surrounding areas, but the bottom line is we are currently going to be working on an assessment just to look at that growth opportunity to see where we can build out. And in the meantime, until we can get to that construction component of a potential build out, we're not going to say no. We're going to still try to get to the yes by leveraging facilities in our surrounding area.
Other questions? Yes, yes.
Sure, this question is for you. It's similar to what we're doing as of the football association. Travel industry. I'm kind of curious what you fear the most out of related to the tax regime and administration or self factory compared with board members, and how these questions change by the size of restaurants. Like, what are you more likely to hear from restaurants versus the large ones?
So for the smaller mom and pops, it's an overwhelming daunting experience. That applies not only for taxes, but licensing, building, et cetera. Our larger members like the tribes, they're fortunate. They have lawyers on staff, they have administrative staff who shepherd and expedite this process. But our small, single unit operators want to open that second one. It's an overwhelming process for that. And frankly, it's funny. You could ask about this whole, has a tax amnesty come up in any discussions? Because that, we've got both residents as well as business owners. Overdue taxes, there was a short-term, 2-month tax amnesty program where taxes would be paid, even if penalty paid. That brings some income to the district, some financial stability. But I think it also saves, again, speaking of the administration, compliance costs, right? That addition at this moment. Similarly, kind of tangent on that is to for the actual DC tax representatives at the desk at OTR more to find solutions. So a business owner goes in there with a problem, they write a letter, it disappears. There are some jurisdictions where that person might be empowered to waive some fees, right? In reason and in some scope. But again, I think that would help. That would help get the bill paid, but also I think would help with the efficiency of the administration.
Can we remind us how many restaurants closed to the pandemic and do you see the numbers changing in the other direction?
Yeah, I think the best number I've seen was 200 this year.
What's the region or this?
That was easy. Yeah, a lot of that. I haven't seen anything recently. I mean, I can tell you, you know, restaurants continue to close every day. It's just not popular to the website anymore. But it's, you know, it's a resilient, relentlessly optimistic industry. I think we all are in hospitality. That also doesn't think to show when we're struggling, right? You know, they want us to go to a restaurant, right, that love close. So I think a lot of it is hidden, right? A lot of struggle and strife out there.
How much did the growth of food prices sort of even impacted the bottom line? And I think larger is on can pass along, but I'm kind of curious about the experience.
No, yeah, no, we just did, our annual survey in February. It costs more money than ever in a restaurant, and you're making less money than ever as well. So, you know, in DC, we're a little bit higher than the national average. Our members report out an average raise in menu prices, about 19%. The national average is closer to 9%. So increasing menu prices by 19%, but costs, food, utilities, rent, all these other costs, they're up 29, 30%. So the menu price increase is not even. And, you know, I think a lot of hospitality, you know, your profitability is sort of one of many metrics, right? Of which you are to success in business for all of our guys. But I mean, it's hard, and it's hard. It's there's
So cans has come up a lot, and you mentioned it. I just wondered if you want to say more about.
Sure. I mean, so just to use like one example, and I can speak outside of a restaurant experience. If you're a returning citizen and you want to get a barber's license, you have more than $100 in an unpaid fine, you cannot get that license, right? And I don't think that would be the intent of, you know, the clean hands law, right? I mean, I think broadly you can speak, the clean hands threshold is only $100, right? And there was a proposal last year to increase that, it didn't work. But we need to keep talking about it. And also, this the rent, everything you need clean hands in order to do. And it's 100% a priority to taxes that are past due, be collected. I've mentioned a couple other ways that we can go about that, which was efficiency. But what clean hands do is it's shutting people out. You know, and you can look at some simple ways, not only just increasing the threshold from $100, like $5,000 for last year, but when you do go to get, if you want to apply for a grace grant, that clean hands needs to be less than 30 days old. Let's make it 90 days, right? I mean, there's certain things we can do just tinker around the edges without having the large change. Sort of see how it goes, but it's ongoing. It's a regular. I get phone calls. And like I said, to part of OTR, they are terrific about resolving it. There's a cost, right, where those agents could be.
I would just add for Solomon's benefit, I can maybe SDCs as well. We've heard a lot about the plight of lower income workers, and you mentioned that. So the affordability of the city's housing is renowned, unfortunately. So I assume that a lot of your frontline workers have to travel great distances. They work at night, or they're servicing meetings that go on. So we have looked at a lot of tax relief that makes the city a little bit more affordable for people. But and I would encourage you, if you have any ideas, to share with us later on to benefit them. We've seen data. I couldn't come yesterday, but I saw one of the data we had that the tax burden on the lower 20% quintile of taxpayers in terms of percentage of income is actually not lower than some of the others. And so that must be a terrible issue for the workers that you rely on to provide the key services. Metro shuts down at whatever time it shuts down, and I'm sure that's an ongoing challenge for you guys, or yes or no, or.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an ongoing challenge, and we all know the primary components: transportation, metro hours, access to childcare is just absolutely huge for our population, because we are hotels are 24/7, open on Christmas Day, Easter Sunday, it's always open. So there has to be someone always there. The issue with metro is a much larger issue, and we actually, most folks will remember, we did end up increasing the occupancy tax, a percentage of a point, to help pitch in to try to enhance it. better, build the infrastructure and develop Metro to move forward, because we know how important it is to get our folks in and out of work every single day. I mean, it is critical. So public transportation and Metro in general specifically, and also access to childcare proves to be this very resilient challenge.
Do you think that's part of what's causing your worker shortage, or I just want?
I don't. Those existed pre-COVID. What's causing our issue is that prior to the pandemic, our biggest workforce issue was an aging population, and how are we going to replace those folks who will be eventually retiring within the next few years with a younger population that's less interested in working within the industry. During the pandemic, a lot of folks took that early retirement opportunity. We had a significant consolidation of households, which we've learned about. So 2-generation households become 3-generation households. And now not everybody has to go back to work because you've been able to consolidate resources. Then there's also, I mean, again, just speaking for hotels, we just got food so bad during the pandemic. And I mean, it was on television, media, it was written about every single day. And I do understand why a young person going to or coming out of college may want to look at some other industries, seeing what they saw firsthand, what the pandemic, the blow that the pandemic dealt to the hotel community. I was at a regional conference yesterday, and it's just not DC, as Robin said. There are a lot of issues that are just happening. This is happening nationwide, and we're really having a challenge attracting the next generation of hospitality professionals.
But Gregory, going back to your point about the, one of the things we've had to do too, just from a flexibility as management and as leaders, with working with our employees is like the flexibility in the work schedule and factoring in, like, I thought it was very important to build a different culture of how you work and the expectation of how you work and the flexibility, to your point, when it comes to childcare, not maybe taking such a strenuous approach to, being here during the late hours. You may want to have the flexibility of coming in earlier, doing the load-in of the shows and things of that nature. But it has required a cultural and a leadership change that may not have been traditional in the past.
Almost my last question. So if we're gonna fulfill the mayor's plan, or you all, and we're gonna grow, right? I look at places like Orlando and Las Vegas, your native New Orleans, that really rely on this more than we do. Do they do something different? I mean, I know they have other things we don't in Las Vegas, it is what it is, but in Orlando, it's at Disney World, and in your city, food and music. So is there something we could do to, as a city, to incentivize this more, this business travel, leisure travel as well, or convention or citywide? And maybe after this, without advocating for anything, if you have information about just other models that cities have done, maybe those or others to share to see what other models there are.
I think we are doing what some of the other cities are doing with the TRD. So that is something that, whether it's called a recovery or an improvement district, that has happened across the nation. I used to work in Los Angeles for the Tourism Bureau there. When I left in May 2011, they were just passing that tourism improvement district. And so it is something that is used often to be able to have more marketing dollars. But I think it's important, when you use an example like Orlando, it's significant because it's not just Orlando and that they have a $70+ million budget. It's also the state of Florida that has a $100 million budget. And then you look at Orlando and the attractions that are within it. And so it's Disney, it's Universal. They are also spending the hundreds of millions of dollars to get people to come to Orlando. And so that's what we're up against. I mean, we may not seem like the same product, and of course we aren't. And we're a completely different kind of destination, but we're both family oriented, right? And so that's a big portion of what we want to attract here, because we see visitors are open to wanting to come to DC for those family activities. And so when you're in that, competitive mode of where are you going, you have to get in front of the consumer in that way. And
I assume that National Park Service in this zoning and development budget.
No, our attractions are free, and so that we can we can yell that from the rooftops, but we need the marketing dollars to be able to do that and get in front of the consumer. That we can see how out of whack it is. I mean, I'm not gonna get into the 51st state, but I'm just saying, like, that's something you can just assume with every other DMO in the country has a state tourism budget behind it as well.
And in addition to the budget that Robin's referencing, what I've also found interesting when you're looking to identify the destination is also not only the offerings of course, making sure you have enough hotels and the restaurant and all that aspect, but also highlighting the fabric of that city and the culture and the creativity of that city, because that makes a difference when you talk about music. As we know, DC is the home of go-go. Like just having that type of experience of, the uniqueness of what that city has to offer also becomes part of the packaging and the promoting of it becoming a destination to visit as well. So it's the resources, it's the services, but it's the fabric of the city, the heartbeat of the city that helps promote it along as well.
Sorry to interrupt, and we have a couple folks have just joined us, and I was leave them into the conversation. We've heard from the restaurants and hotels and the conventions. Kimberly Douglas from Willie Mammoth Theater, is that right?
Yes.
Join us. Do you want to just say a word, introduce yourself, and say a couple words about the perspective you bring, and anything, just in 2 or 3 minutes that you want to lift up for us to have in mind?
Sure, and hi everyone, I'm Kimberly Douglas, the new managing director at the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company, located in Penn Quarter, and we are performing arts, producing and presenting theater. Here with my colleague, who is the interim managing director, Ted DeLong. I have been on the job officially 3 weeks, and will do my best to speak to some of the interesting things that we are navigating at this time. But essentially, a lot of what you've heard today is also impacting our industry in terms of attracting candidates in the creative economy that are able to have gainful employment with Woolly Mammoth under the production side, under the retail side, as well as we try to build out new ways of attracting revenue. As a nonprofit theater space, it is helpful for us to be located in Penn Quarter just to have the restaurant district. However, because of the pandemic, we are, struggling with attracting, the level of clientele we once had pre-pandemic that want to create a more robust experience in their entertainment experience. And Ted, did you want to talk to some of the other?
Sure, I could talk about that. Hi again, Ted DeLong. I've been the interim managing director for about a year, and the whole nonprofit theater industry has been facing about a 30 to 60% drop in attendance since the pandemic. And we're slowly clawing our way back out of that hole, not just Woolly Mammoth, but all of our peers around the district and surrounding areas and around the country even. And I think what I would just say is, we're a really vital part of the ecosystem. Woolly Mammoth is a small part, but collectively our industry is a big part of drawing folks into downtown or other parts of the city. They go to a restaurant beforehand, maybe they go to, get a drink afterwards, maybe they stay in a hotel. We draw a lot of people in from the whole region and indeed nationally. And I think the thing that I would really say is how crucial the tax-driven support that comes from the DC government is to our institution. And this is, I'm not from around here, and this is one of the most richly funded local arts ecosystems I've seen, and it's really a credit, and I really hope it continues, and I hope the dedicated funding is preserved, because it's so important. It's really, as our industry, drags itself hand over hand out of this hole that the pandemic created for us, support from government funding is going to be critical to helping us survive. That's what I would say. We don't pay taxes generally, except for sales taxes that we pass through, but we're beneficiaries. We're really grateful and hope it can continue.
So how has technology affected performance? I mean, I know I've talked to people up in New York who say that you talk to the unions of musicians, they don't like technology because it's, resulted in reduced like orchestra pit and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But how is it affecting your work? Is it plus, minus? What would you say?
I think that during the pandemic, Woolly Mammoth, like many theaters around the country, adopted new technological platforms out of necessity, and the unions, after some initial reluctance, went along with that and sort of recognized a partnership was going to be valuable to their members. And that spirit has mostly preserved, but I think that what most institutions that sort of dipped their toe into that learned was that it was really hard to monetize that type of stuff. Like, we can charge $50, $60, $70 for a theater ticket. You can never charge that much for an opportunity to watch something online. You might get away with $15, probably less. And so the incredible costs that go into creating that work or licensing it or whatever just can't be offset. And there wasn't, because we all did it so fast during the pandemic, it wasn't really capitalized. Like, there wasn't a big donor that said, here's $10 million to start this up and see what happens. We all just did it because we had to. And as such, since the pandemic has mostly wound down and we're trying to get people back into our venues, that technological stuff is kind of, people have backed off from it. Some are still continuing to do it. At Woolley, we're not really doing that at all anymore. We're basically fully back live in the venue again. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So I was just gonna ask, and it's not unrelated to the remarks you all made, but you mentioned, places like Orlando having lots of kind of on-budget investments into industry. I just wonder what some of those are, what you think, what kinds of investments you think might be missing, because I think part of our job is to also think about the adequacy of our revenues and whether we have enough money to make.
Well, I mean, I think overall, we think, in terms of the taxes that visitors are generated, that our budget should be tied to that in some way and the impact of that. And so I think broadly, that's what we believe. Gregory's talking about a bold kind of idea or move. One of the things I think we should just appreciate is that the work that Destination DC does, that Events DC does, in terms of winning business in our city, impacts the region. And so there is a regional impact of business that is grown that, whether intended or not, because we're creating compression in the hotels throughout the city through hosting citywides, big festivals, events, et cetera, it means that it's pushing out the business to our regional partners, Maryland and Virginia. And so, I'm not advocating anything, I'm just saying, they are also in business as a result of DC doing well.
Got one thing and that is gun violence and public safety. And I'll mention it in this context because I do think it affects economic forecasts, right? It affects economic performance, right? We have members who will close at 8 or 9 o'clock at night because it's not safe for them to stay open any later. Those are sales not happening, revenue not coming in. We have members who pay $250,000, $300,000 a year for an off-duty police officer that are not being, that's resources that could be allocated to something else. And in every discussion that we have, we talk a lot about public safety and violence in this town, but it has a serious effect on economic performance, which is what the discussion is about. And I would encourage the commission to contemplate and reflect on that in its recommendations, because until we get this figured out, nothing else matters. There's tweeting, right, about carjacking. That's not good for people.
Sobering thought for us all to think about. It's been really illuminating conversation. I appreciate, I think we've got a much better feel for the trends that you all are facing. Again, an uncertain time, a lot of, sounds like things are still evolving, trying to figure out how much are we coming back from possession, what really will the post-COVID world look like for all of us. So it's gratitude for your work, for your thinking about it, bringing these insights to us. I think we'd be really interested in, as you we've got a few more months left in our process. So as data continue to come in, as you continue to see things transpire, as you have, as perhaps Gregory inspires you to go away with a big, come back in the middle of the night, a couple nights from now, you wake up and like, here's my big bold idea. Please don't hesitate to share it. We're accessible in a variety of ways, and don't hesitate to reach out. Any closing thoughts? Let you go a few minutes early to enjoy the rest of the
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is.